Hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of the Oakey Pokey series. Now I've got 3 frames glued up, which are now looking rather lovely. Now a lot of you were questioning my gluing method in the previous video, which is fair enough. It looks like it's an absolute ball ache, which it kind of is, but it depends what perspective you look at it from. What I did is obviously clamp on or glue on these 45-degree blocks, which would allow me to get a clamp on there perpendicular to the joint. And a lot of you mentioned about using a band cramp to do this instead, because it eliminates that process of having to glue the blocks on. A band cramp, it works perfectly for when I'm doing like standard miters, like pitch frames, maybe not boxes. Doesn't tend to work too good on taller sides, but general frames, band cramps work brilliant, especially when you put blocks on there. But in that time between episode 3 and 4, when I kind of took a few weeks off this project, I did try and clamp this up with band cramps and put some blocks on it. And it closed up the miters, but it wasn't quite enough. And as we all know by now, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and if there's the tiniest little gap, I will source a way of trying to fix it. And no matter how much I wrenched them round, if I ratcheted them, whatever, it just was not closing those gaps up. And that's mainly because it's just pressing into the frame at like 90 degrees like that. You're not actually pressing the mitre together as such. I mean, yeah, those forces kind of bisect, I suppose, and meet at the mitre, but at the end of the day, you cannot beat the pressure of just pressing perpendicular to that mitre. The other thing people mentioned were the Veritas speed clamps, or the little twisty things. And again, I did try those. I've got, well, I won't get the bars out, but I've got a nut there as evidence. I do have those frame clamps. I did try that. Didn't work again. You just can't apply enough force with this to close up those gaps. So that is why I ended up going for this 45-degree block system on here. Now, obviously, waiting for these to glue on does add time to the process of building these frames. But in reality, this doesn't actually add a whole lot of cost, because if I was building these for a deadline, yes, it would be a problem having to wait 24 hours for these blocks to dry on. But in terms of the actual man hours that go into it, gluing these blocks on takes like a minute per frame. I'm just masking taping them on. It's actually a very quick process. Then when I do that, I can put them aside and work on another project, such as the bass guitar, which I'm going to be doing now. I don't have to even think about these. Then when it comes to the next day, I spend a minute putting a clamp on either corner, leave it for another day, and voila, we have got a frame. It doesn't actually take that many man hours to get these glued up. And also the other thing to look at is, if I was using a band cramp for this, one of the nightmares is trying to hold all 8 of those blocks in place while you're getting the band cramp around it. Yes, you can use masking tape, I suppose, but it might slip. It's just a lot more secure this way, I suppose. Now, in saying that, I'm not saying that this solution is perfect, because as I explained, it doesn't take a lot of time to get the blocks on and get them glued up, but it does take time in getting them off and planing it flat and everything and cleaning it up afterwards. That I cannot contend this method isn't great for, whereas a band cramp with blocks, you just take them off and it is glued up. So I had a comment from someone, I can't remember who, hang on, I'm just going to credit them, 1 minute. Where are you? Where are you? There you go, it was from Chris. He actually recommended gluing them on with hide glue, which didn't even think of. The great thing about hide glue is it is reversible. You get a really strong bond with it to start with, and then get a little bit of heat and steam on it, and you can take the blocks straight back off again. So that would mean I would have the strength of these blocks. It'd be very easy to glue them on, leave it 24 hours, and then once they're all dried up, apply a bit of heat to it, they'll snap straight off, and then I've just got a little bit of cleanup to do on the glue there, but I don't have to worry about cutting these blocks off, planing the wood flush, and then getting rid of all the glue. It's just simply take them off, bit of cleanup, done. So great suggestion, thank you very much for that. I haven't actually got any hide glue in the workshop here, so I need to go to Axminster and grab some of that. But for the time being, I'm just going to clean up these blocks on the bandsaw, get them all planed flush, and we'll see the resulting joints that we've been left with from these 45-degree blocks. Let's go. Okay, so they're all cleaned up. sanded to 180 grit, all the glue's been taken off. That is the process that takes a little bit too long and is what will bump up the price of them because, again, me just being picky, the tiniest bit of tear out, I've got to go and scrape it out with my cabinet scrapers, sand it. I can't just let little imperfections go, and with batch producing things, I guess sometimes you should, but I've got to cut myself a little bit of slack because these components have been sitting around for quite a while now, and as a result have been dented. They've got a few marks on them and stuff. Whereas if I was to plane them, thickness them, shove them through the sander, glue them up straight away, those dents would be minimal and the cleanup wouldn't take as long. The only thing I would need to do is clean up the corners, get the glue off them, and then it would be ready to go. So anyway, now that is done, I'm going to put a finish on them before putting in the cork and before putting on the backboard. And for this, I'm just going to use tung oil because it's very easy to apply and it should give a nice enough look. Osmo is an option for this, but I tend to find that Osmo on smaller components like this is a little bit fiddly because you have to make sure you spread it very thin or else it goes sticky. And because there's a lot of sides and crevices to this, I don't want to be messing around with that. Oil, pretty much foolproof, and it's not going to wear over time because these aren't going to be handled that much. So this seems the way to go. This is tung oil. Just because I had it knocking around, I would have used boiled linseed or something like that as well. Basically, this is quite a yellowish oil, so it's going to give it a very yellow look on the ash. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I'm just going to go for it. Now, this takes 4 hours between coats because this is a quick drying one. Actually, let's just give it a quick shake first. So yeah, it dries very quickly, which means you can get 2 coats on in a day. So I'll just slap this on, do it as quick as possible. And then I'll wipe off the excess, leave it for a few hours, chuck on another coat afterwards, and that'll all be sorted. So I've got them all finished. They look pretty good. They feel nice and smooth, which is all good. Now I need to fit the cork into the back, which means cutting it to size. I think I've stored it over here somewhere. Aha! Still in its wooden box. Its wooden box and its cardboard box. I'm having another late one tonight, so apologies in advance if I start going loopy. Remember what happened before when I was making the magazine rack and things started going a little bit? That might start happening again. So, right. Let's measure the internal size because I've completely forgotten what it needs to be. Where's my pen? How does a workshop have no paper? Right, there we go. What do we say? 620. 620 wide, 918. Okay, ow, just stabbed myself with a pen. Shift that out the way. Cork, little mark there, and go up the other end. Good. Right, join those up. 918 up on that line. Put a scrap bit underneath, and I'll do this in a couple of cuts just to make sure it's nice and clean. Done. Lovely. Frame on there. Cork, hopefully, within that recess. Happy day. So it doesn't look like it fits too well on there at the moment, but that's because it is bowed. Cool. Right, and then I have pre-cut these MDF sheets to fit in the back because I have to pay to use machinery here for like every 5 minutes or something like that. So by the time I set up my camera and stuff, it's just unnecessary money. So let's skip that stage. Now I had to do these a little bit undersized because the frames admittedly were a tiny bit out of square because I completely forgot to check that. So there is a small gap of about 1 millimeter running around all of the edges. Okay, and then this is where I don't quite know what I should do because I'm thinking of screwing the MDF into the back of the frame so it can be removed later on. But the rebate at the back isn't, it's not massive, so I don't have a lot of material to screw into. And if I do try and get in the middle of that material, it starts busting out the edge of the MDF. I know this because I have already created a pin board ahead of time, just because I wanted to check it was all okay off camera. And yeah, it started blowing out the sides of the MDF, even if I countersink it. Now, I'm not too worried about this because it is the back of the frame, but what I'm thinking is screwing and gluing it, because then it adds a little bit more strength and rigidity to the frame. And also the way I thought about attaching these to the wall, because obviously this is something that I haven't figured out yet on camera, is using a keyhole router cutter. And because of the size of the keyhole router cutter, it is going to hit the MDF and cut through that as well as the wood as well. There was no real avoiding that because, again, I haven't left enough material on the edges. It's definitely becoming a bit of a bodge by this point, isn't it? But if I glue that MDF in place, at least it means that it's going to be, or the MDF at least is going to be a little bit more secure in there, rather than screwing it in place and risk busting it all up with the router cutter. My other thought process was to like cut some semicircular wooden bits to go in there and then route through those, and then I could just fix the MDF as normal. But then it's more, you've got to add more to the process. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave one of them screwed in place like I have before, so that one I just showed you, that one is only screwed in. This one I'm going to glue and screw it, and then what I'll do is route both of them with the keyhole cutter, see which one turns out best, see if there is actually any difference between them, and just go from there, because I think the more I think about it, the more this project is just going to prolong, and we don't want that anymore, because progress has been very slow the past few weeks, and my patience is running thin with them. Where's my glue? Where did I put that? Wait, no, I forgot. The other thing that was the problem with this pinboard, which is going to prevent me from gluing this in place, is the cork on this. There's like a bit of bounce to it and it isn't quite hitting the MDF at the back. And this is happening because obviously the cork is a very flexible material. So really what I want to do is have some double-sided tape or even glue maybe, holding that cork against the MDF at the back so that I don't get this like bubbling on there, because it's not the nicest thing to poke. So I need to do that before I glue the back panels in place, but of course I don't have any double-sided tape, so I'm going to need to buy that. So what I'll do is call this episode here. Now I'm going to put out a poll or suggestions thing, because I definitely need a lot of suggestions with this project. If you have any other ideas on how to hang this on the wall, drop them in the comments below. I would love to hear your opinions. The other thing I did think with this is just hanging it on a nice string or something like that. Like one of my mates at uni made some floating shelves that were hanging from the wall with, I think it was just hemp string. Looked really nice. I mean, we took the mick of it at the time because it was kind of a bit bodged together. So Will, if you're watching this, your project's rubbish. So yeah, that was one of the things that I thought I could do with this. The other thing is just like, no, could I say that? You know those like wall hanging Velcro things that you stick one side of the Velcro to the wall and then you stick the other side to this? They are pretty strong. It could probably hold these up, but it doesn't have the whole craft essence, I suppose, that this channel is about. I feel like I should do something more like wood-based and more like not just buying something off the shelves of somewhere. But yeah, any suggestions, chuck them below. I'd love to hear them. And yeah, see you in the next episode.